are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, April 11th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the announcement of, and I know I touched upon this yesterday, the Packers and the Eagles being the two teams that will be playing in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. I know we've known for a while that the Eagles were going to be the team that was going to be playing, but we were waiting on an opponent. It was either going to be the Packers or the Browns, and they indeed went with the Packers. So we'll get into that in a second. Then we'll talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars in the second part of the show. We'll talk about Josh Allen's massive contract that he got from the Jaguars. We'll also talk about the Jaguars and how they're going to bounce back, or going to try to bounce back from the collapse at the end of 2023. Then, in the third part of the show, a couple other things as well. We'll talk about Mike Gesicki and him praising Joe Burrow. Mike Gesicki was brought in by the Bengals to be the starting tight end. So we'll get into that, talk about the Bengals and what to expect from them in 2024. And then in the final part of the show, we will talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers as they look for a veteran wide receiver. There was an article on that, so I want to talk about that as well. Because I've talked about the Steelers a decent amount, so we're going to continue to do that on the show today. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing the Packers and the Eagles. So these will be the two teams that will match up in Brazil. And I was just listening to Mark Murphy from the Packers, and he talked about how the Packers have one of the top fan bases in Brazil. And I know also from watching Tom Grassi as well, he said the same thing. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game. This I know we're not going to preview it because it's so far in advance, but again, you know, talking about the two teams coming into this game, you know, with the Eagles, we'll talk about the Jaguars collapse in the next segment, but the Eagles one kind of overshadows that because the Eagles were 10-1 at one point. I mean, the Jaguars were 8-3 at one point, but the Eagles were 10-1. They were the top team in the NFC at one point, and they collapsed. And a lot of changes were made, new coordinators. They brought in guys, you know, on the defensive side of the ball, and also bringing in Saquon Barkley on the offensive side of the ball. They did lose Jason Kelce. They did lose Fletcher Cox. Both those guys retiring. So, yeah, it's going to be a little different not having those guys in the locker room. But I like the moves that they made on defense. The Barkley move, yeah, they overpaid for him, but if Barkley's healthy, that's a good move for them as well. And for them, they want to get back to running the football like they did in 2022. So you got them. And then on the other side, you got the Packers, who are one of the youngest teams in the NFL, were the youngest team in the NFL and still are. And I expect big things out of them as well. With Jordan Love now in year 2 being the full-time starter, you only expect them to go up. And they brought in Josh Jacobs. They brought in Xavier McKinney. So they made moves on both sides of the ball. Again, we still got the draft for both teams. But the Josh Jacobs move, again, I was very surprised by that. And again, for the moment, you thought that it was going to be Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs coming out of the backfield. And that was not the case, because then the Packers let go of Aaron Jones. So now it's Josh Jacobs. They did bring back A.J. Dillon. So at least they have him back, even though he hasn't really been that great. But I'm excited for the Packers season, too. I think they're going to be a very good team. And I was watching a clip from the Rich Eisen show, and they were saying how someone leaked it out that it was going to be the Browns, but it ended up being the Packers as the opponent. And again, you look at the colors of the flag for Brazil, and that tells you all you need to know, that it was going to be the Packers. But also, again, the Packers have a large fan base in Brazil, from what I heard. So that must have played a role in it as well. So, yeah, I mean, coming into this season, both these teams are going to have high expectations. And the Packers, they finished the season strong. Well, yeah, they finished the season strong. Again, you lost to the 49ers. You had the lead against them. Jordan Love throws that bad pick to end the game. But, again, the Packers, they have nothing to be ashamed of. I expect them to be good in 2024. And the Eagles, they want to try to, rewrite the wrong and not have this collapse and put the collapse behind them and go out and be the team that was 10-1. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch that. And also, again, the game is on Peacock, so either get a subscription, or if you know somebody, then maybe ask for their account if they're not a sports fan, or get together for the game, because it is on a Friday night. So, and I'm looking forward to it. But the other thing too is the NFL is occupying every single day of the week except for Tuesday. And all right, for some reason, camera just decides to. I was having a little bit of issues before going live today, so that just out of nowhere decides to do that. That's all right. But yeah. So the NFL basically occupying every single day of the week except for Tuesday. So, and I did see something that they're not going to. Manny, the Chip Shot Football Podcast host, I believe he did a short on the NFL, basically, passing on having games on Christmas Eve. They're only going to have games on Christmas, the 2 games on Christmas. And, yeah, so that's what's going to be happening. No games on Tuesday, so Tuesday's not getting any love. So, and we'll see in the future if the NFL finds a way to put a game on Tuesday. But right now, yeah, you got Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, the Saturday games late in the season when college football ends, or we're in the playoffs for it. Then you got Sunday, of course. Now you're going to have Wednesday because of Christmas falling on a Wednesday. You got the Friday games, well, the Black Friday game, as well as the game in Brazil. Tuesday doesn't have anything. So, yeah, but the NFL is occupying every day of the week, basically, in 2024. So, and, again, not a big fan of it. Not a huge fan. Not really thrilled that it's going to be on Christmas again, because from a fantasy perspective, if you got a big matchup, you don't want to be sweating that out while you're with family, enjoying the holiday, if you celebrate it, of course, because that's what happened to me, because I was in my semifinals for my fantasy playoffs, and I ended up losing by a point. And again, if I was at home by myself, I would have definitely threw something. Well, I did drop my phone because I just was devastated over the loss, but I just don't want to have to deal with that. But again, I say that I might not even make the playoffs. So, we're ways away from drafting and things like that. But not really thrilled about that. But also, I don't think the players are thrilled about it either, because it's just, it just, you're risking more injuries. Even though the NFL will say, there's no risk for that. They conduct their own research. But we'll see how this game goes here. But I'm really excited about it, because I think it's an enticing matchup, and both teams have high expectations going into 2024. So, and we'll find out everything else next month when the schedule comes out, because we will do a show just covering the schedule when it comes out, all the big games, all the rematches and players going back to their old teams when all that is. I'm looking forward to that as well. But yeah, I mean, for the quarterbacks too. I mean, for Jordan Love, you're hoping that he carries over what he did towards the end of the year into 2024, and for Jalen Hurts, the criticisms of Jalen Hurts, they were out in full force. And I know in some of the comments I was looking at when they announced the matchup, they were talking about, like, because the caption was like, oh, you got top quarterbacks going at it in Brazil, and people were saying, well, Jordan Love's a top quarterback, not Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Hurts has got to prove some doubters wrong in 2024. And I think he will. I think it's hard for him, I think, not to succeed in this offense with the players around him. But now if you go into 2024 and more of the same happens, that's good. That's a problem. That is a problem. But I mean, it's hard for me to look at the Eagles and say that they're going to be bad. They're not. They're going to be a good team. I think Jalen Hurts will bounce back. The Eagles also lost two great coordinators, and that also, I think, played a role in that. So yeah, it's a big year for Hurts, big year for Nick Sirianni, I think, because if the Eagles do end up having a bad season somehow, I think he probably is out. So again, I mean, this game is not going to define all that, but this is just some of the things that you could look at going into this game here. Again, not going to. It's again, both teams are going to have high expectations, and I'm expecting it to be a good game. So not going to pick it or anything because it's only April, but it's definitely going to be interesting. So I'm looking forward to it, and yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with this game. So let me know what you guys think about this game. What do you expect from it? Yeah, at least we got one game to look forward to. It. Well, one of the games, another game is set here. That's what I was trying to say. So you got that, and the night before, of course, you're gonna have the Chiefs opening up against an unknown opponent. And then, of course, you got all the games on Sunday, and I think maybe a doubleheader on Monday night. I forget. What did they do in week 1? I know the second week they did a doubleheader. I don't know about that. I think the first week maybe it was just one game, but who knows? Because I remember, like, they used to have a game would be on at 7, then you had a game on at 10, but they haven't done that in a while, so we'll see what they end up doing. But, they're going to continue with the doubleheaders on Monday night. And I don't like having 2 games on at the same time. 2 nationally televised games. But that's what they decided to do. So, just have to deal with that. So, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we will discuss a couple things with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll talk about Josh Allen's new deal. Not Josh Allen from the Bills, but Josh Allen of the Jaguars. As well as their redemption, because they're another team that is looking to bounce back in 2024 after a rough ending to their season, a collapse of their own. So that's what we will get into when we come back from our first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about a couple of things with the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll talk about Josh Allen's new deal, as well as them trying to redeem themselves from a rough ending in 2023, and also kind of talk about the AFC South as a whole, which is something I've done about a lot, considering what's happened over the last week with Stephon Diggs now being traded to the Texans. So now let's get into the Josh Allen stuff. So Josh Allen and the Jaguars, they reached a 5-year, $150 million contract agreement with $88 million guaranteed. Allen talked about winning, his desire to winning Defensive Player of the Year, a Super Bowl, and MVP honors, aiming to surpass his sister's achievements in the WNBA. His new deal gives him an average salary per year of $30 million, ranking him third among all current defensive players. Allen initially was tagged by the Jaguars, set to earn $24 million if he played under the tag. He had a standout 2023 season with a franchise record of 17.5 sacks, leading to his contract extension. Trent Baalke, the general manager, did not offer Allen an extension after the 2022 season, prompting Allen to have a standout, proven season in 2023, and definitely did with 17.5 sacks, like I said. Allen is only the third of the Jaguars' first-round draft picks from 2008 to 2020 to sign an extension with the team. The Jaguars, they had to keep him, and they also brought in Arik Armstead to that defensive line. You still have Trayvon Walker as well, another high draft pick. So, yeah, you look at that defensive line, and, yeah, the big things hopefully for them in 2024. And the other thing, too, is, though, they did lose some guys on defense as well. They lost Darius Williams. He signed back with the Rams. They also lost, I think, Rayshawn Jenkins as well, another guy in the backfield on defense. So, yeah, they also did lose guys. Also lost Calvin Ridley on offense, too. They did bring in Gabe Davis. But, that collapse was not great. It's, again, I said the Eagles' collapse kind of overshadowed that. But the Jaguars' collapse was pretty bad, too. And also Doug Peterson, this is an article from towards the end of March. He talked about the collapse. He said, "I don't know if I'll ever get over it." This is what he said at the NFL League meetings. For me, I think it's going to be my motivation, my fuel moving forward. But, yeah, they did lose Calvin Ridley, Rayshawn Jenkins, Darius Williams. But they did bring in Armstead, like I said. They also brought in Mitch Morse to bolster the offensive line, somebody the Bills released. Darnell Savage they brought in, Ronald Darby. So they did add to the backfield after losing Rayshawn Jenkins and Darius Williams. And they also brought in, like I said, Gabe Davis, as well as Devin Duvernay as well. And this is some of the other things that Doug Peterson had to say. These guys know how to win. That's kind of this is about the guys that they brought in. These guys know how to win. That's kind of the influx of talent that we want to bring onto our roster. Guys who've been there and done that. Again, I've got to continue to message the team in the right way. We have to have that confidence and that swagger that you're going to get the job done on game day. I think bringing in some of these free agents this spring is going to help that. And yeah, I mean, I like the Arik Armstead move. And, he talked about how I did do a segment on, with the whole situation of the 49ers releasing him. But, the Jaguars bringing him in, I thought that was a good move. And, we'll see now how that defensive line is. Because, like I said, you got Josh Allen back, you got Trayvon Walker, and now Arik Armstead. So, again, I mean, you hope for big things for them in 2024 and be able to get to the quarterback. And the other thing, too, is protecting Trevor Lawrence as well. Because Trevor Lawrence got really banged up towards the end of the year. And, bringing in Mitch Morse helps. I know they signed Ezra Cleveland as well. I think he was one of their free agent acquisition. Well, they re-signed Ezra Cleveland though. But regardless, that's another important thing is making sure that Trevor Lawrence is protected, and because he's a franchise guy, and I think some people they still are waiting to see a little bit more from Trevor Lawrence. For me, I still think, yeah, he's the franchise guy. I think he has that talent. You've seen it. It's just I think last year was just a rough year. But again, you go into 2024 and, the season doesn't go the way you want it to, well, and Trevor Lawrence has a bad year, well, yeah, then there's going to be more questions. Now, if the Jaguars don't have a good year, then I think it's safe to say that Doug Peterson's probably out. And you don't want that if you're a Jaguars fan, because that just, that means you got to go through that search again. Because you see how they were Trevor Lawrence's rookie season with Urban Meyer as the head coach. It just was horrible. And then Doug Peterson comes in, and yeah, they didn't get off to the best start, but then they got hot, and they were able to make the playoffs. They win the AFC South. They have that huge comeback win against the Chargers, being down, 27-0. And they go up against the Chiefs. They lose, but again, you expected them to take an even bigger jump in 2023. And again, they were kind of like the Eagles, where like they were struggling on offense a little bit to kind of find their identity, but they were winning games despite that. But then things just kind of fell apart, and Trevor Lawrence got hurt, and it's just then you end up losing that game to the Titans in Week 18, and you miss out in the playoffs. So it just, not a great end to their season. And now you look towards 2024. And again, losing Ridley was kind of tough, but you bring in Gabe Davis. I mean, it is kind of true, though. Like, you look at their receiving core. You got Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, and Gabe Davis. Those guys are good number 2, number 3 wide receivers. They don't really have that number 1 wide receiver. You got Evan Ingram, who has really become a playmaker for them since he signed from the Giants a couple years ago. But, also, and let's not forget Travis Etienne, too, who's, when he's healthy, he's one of the top running backs in the NFL, and he was having a really good season. Still ended up having a really good season. But in the beginning of the year, he was great. Then as the season progressed, I don't know what happened, but Etienne is one of the top running backs in the NFL. So hopefully he carries that over into 2024. Well, the first half of 2023 into next season. But yeah, the other thing too is the division. The division is going to be tougher. And the Texans, they exceeded expectations. They won the division. They split with the Jaguars, but they ended up winning the division at 10-7. And you got a healthy Anthony Richardson coming back, and the Titans with the moves they made, them getting Ridley from the Jaguars. Yeah, the division's going to be tougher. And I know I remember in an interview Trevor Lawrence made a joke about the division and said, like, he hopes that the teams are horrible because, that means that they would win the division. But, yeah, that's not the case. Well, it was something along the lines of that. I forget what he said exactly. But, yeah, he wants to have an easy division. That's not going to be the case in 2024. It's going to be a tough division. The Texans, with all the moves they made, now getting Diggs, and they won the division. So they're looking to repeat as AFC South champs. You got the Colts with Anthony Richardson coming back and hopefully a full year of Jonathan Taylor now. And then, like I said, you got the Titans. Now, again, I probably look at the Titans as that last place team at the moment. But again, this division is going to be competitive. And it's the Jaguars, it's going to be tougher. So, it's going to be a big year for Doug Peterson, big year for Trevor Lawrence. They got to go out there and prove it that collapse was just a fluke. Because if they end up having a bad season, then changes are going to have to be made. But right now, I would look at the Texans as being the favorites, just because of all the moves they made. I mean, how could you not like what the Texans have done this offseason? And over the past couple of seasons now. Now making the right moves at head coach and drafting the right quarterback. I mean, it turns out getting the number 2 overall pick instead of the number 1 overall pick ended up working out because C.J. Stroud was unbelievable. So you could thank Lovie Smith and Davis Mills, for winning that game against the Colts to give them. And, yeah, that was on like a Hail Mary, and that was on like a 4th and 20 they got that touchdown. I completely I forgot about that. Like, I knew they won the game, but I forgot like how they won the game. And it was like just like on a miraculous play. It was on like like I said, it was on like 4th and 20, and Mills like threw it to I forget the receiver, but they caught it, and they ended up winning the game against the Colts, and that's what gave them the number 2 pick instead of the number 1 pick. And yeah, that was unbelievable, and that's what led to them getting C.J. Stroud, and look where they are now. And it's and you see where they were a couple years ago to now. It's unbelievable how they turned it around so fast. And they were a contender, with Deshaun Watson and Bill O'Brien, but then things fell apart there, and now you got the new regime, and things are looking up in Houston. So, but yeah, for the Jaguars, you're hoping things are up in 2024 because, I mean, they took a step back, and, well, they took a lot more than a step back. Because, again, at one point they were 8-3, and, I mean, I kept saying it. I'm like, oh, yeah, they got the division locked up. That's pretty much it. But then we kept going through the second half of the season, and, they were losing games, and Trevor Lawrence gets hurt. And they ended up missing the playoffs. So let's see how they bounce back in 2024. But again, the division's going to be tougher. And bigger picture, you look at the conference. I mean, how many times do I talk about the AFC and just the gauntlet that it is? Now, again, injuries happen. And teams that you thought were going to be good end up not being good. Some of them at least. And the Jaguars could be that. So, we'll have to see. But for me, I look at the Texans as the favorites. I think right now you could say the Colts are better. Or they're right in that. I mean, I think the Texans are the favorites, and then I got the Titans being that last place team right now. So right now it's, you got the Colts and the Jags, for second and third place. But yeah, you then you got to look to the wild card if that's the case. But we'll have to wait and see. So before I go to break again, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Well, we'll talk about Mike Gesicki and his comments on Joe Burrow. And, so that'll be a Bengals segment when we come back from break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about Mike Gesicki and the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I know my friend texted this in our group chat, as well as Nelson, the basketball podcast host, who is in the chat. So O.J. Simpson has passed away. That's kind of a big deal. Again, I mean, there's a lot of things that you could talk about with him, but we won't get into that. But I don't have anything out in front of me right now, but just because news broke, I just wanted to bring that up. I'm not going to really go into more detail with that. I don't know if any. So we do have a post here. So former NFL running back, Heisman Trophy winner O.J. Simpson has passed away at the age of 76 after a battle with cancer. One of the most well-known figures in NFL history, and obviously with some other stuff that went on. Don't want to get into it, but he won the 1968 Heisman Trophy at USC, was the first overall pick in the 1969 NFL Draft, and was the NFL rushing leader 4 different times with the Bills. He rushed for 2,000 yards in just 14 games in 1973. Wonder if we'll ever see that again. Probably not. He was a 5-time All-Pro who finished his career with 11,236 yards before entering the Hall of Fame. So, what the post says, Simpson leaves behind a pretty complicated legacy, and that's I guess a good way to put it, if you want to even say that. But it's one nobody can erase from the story of the NFL. And of course, one of the comments on the post that I'm looking at right now says, "I'm sure these comments will be interesting to say the least." Yeah. I'm just going to only mention the football career side of things because I don't want to get into everything else. So that happened. O.J. Simpson has passed away. Let's get into now. Yeah, again, it's always tough to kind of segue into what you're going to talk about after talking about something like this, but yeah, I try my best. I try my best, but yeah, there's never really an easy way to do that. So, let's get into now this topic here. So, Mike Gesicki had a couple things to say about Joe Burrow, and obviously he was one of their free agent acquisitions at tight end, And we're still kind of waiting on what they're going to do with T. Higgins. I know they traded Joe Mixon. They brought in Zach Moss to be the lead running back to form like a tandem with him and Chase Brown. We'll see if Chase Brown ends up being a good player for them. I know he was making some plays for them towards the end of the year. But we're waiting on T. Higgins. Tyler Boyd is still a free agent, who we'll talk about a little bit in the next segment regarding the Steelers. So, yeah. With Mike Gesicki now, this is what he talked about with Joe Burrow. He said that he's never been in the huddle with that kind of talent. This is what Gesicki said. He's been great. He's been somebody I've been able to reach out to and have conversations. He's been a leader in the locker room who a lot of guys look to. I'm definitely one of those guys looking to him. I've heard great things about him as a teammate. He's easy to talk to, good sense of humor. Let's see, what else did he say here? Over the last 5 years, I've seen him run across the field and make explosive plays. Is this about Gesicki, I guess. Over the last 5 years, I've seen him run across the field and make explosive plays, go across the field like on a crossing route, and he's got enough speed and size to be able to separate and make those catches. Obviously, he can go down the seam, and his red zone stuff is impressive. Gesicki was a 2018 draft pick of the Dolphins. Spent the first 5 years of his career in Miami, starting 31 games over that span. Twice he recorded 700-plus receiving yards in a season, and in 2021 finished among tight ends with 73 receptions, a career high. Yeah, I mean, he was in New England briefly, and New England just wasn't great. Yeah, I mean, for the Bengals, I think it's a good target to bring in. I mean, it's only, I think, on like a 1-year deal. So, I mean, I know they brought in Irv Smith, last offseason. I know when they had JioSaavn, he was productive for the Bengals with Burrow, but now you bring in Gesicki. So, I mean, now, again, we got to wait and see what they do with T. Higgins, but now if you lose T. Higgins, I mean, that only makes Gesicki's role more important. But, yeah, high praise for him. I mean, you look at Gesicki and the quarterbacks that he's played with. Now he's playing with Joe Burrow, and Burrow, obviously, when he's healthy, is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So, I think that helps Gesicki out. And I think for fantasy owners, maybe Gesicki's one of those late tight ends, late round picks that you take a chance on. Because, the Bengals offense, when it's clicking, it's one of the best offenses in the NFL. And that's mainly, again, because of Joe Burrow. So, but yeah, I mean, Burrow is going to be the best quarterback that Gesicki has played with up to this point in his career. Because he's played with Tua, he's played with Ryan Fitzpatrick, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi. Yeah, just Joe Burrow is easily the best quarterback that he's played with. Well, we got to see them play a game together now. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what kind of season Gesicki has. The Bengals, Joe Burrow is healthy. I mean, this team is one of the best teams in the AFC. And I know, like, when the Texans got Diggs, I know I was going over who the top teams are. I mean, I still think it's the Chiefs, the Ravens, and I think with the healthy Bengals squad, you got the Bengals. I would put them ahead of the Texans as well. So like you got the Bills and the Texans after that. But yeah, I mean, if Burrow's healthy, like I mean, I expect this team to be. This team could throw a wrench in the Chiefs three-peating. Now, there's other teams as well. Like I said, the Ravens, the Texans as well. But I still look at the Bengals as the team that has the best shot to, just because they've done it before. And, again, I mean, we still got to wait on what happens with T. Higgins, like I said. And you hope that the Bengals are able to keep him, if you're a Bengals fan, because, again, you lose T. Higgins now. I mean, you lost him and you lost Tyler Boyd. Now, again, Tyler Boyd is still out there to bring back, but it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. But, again, they paid Burrow. They want to pay Jamar Chase, so, yeah, you're going to lose some guys, and they might end up losing T. Higgins as well. We'll see if he does get traded before next season. Maybe he gets traded during the draft. That's also possible. Also, I don't know if, I mean, sure, you guys that are watching saw this, but also Justin Jefferson was commenting on Burrow and Chase's chemistry in Cincinnati, and it kind of seems like he feels left out. So maybe, I don't, obviously they all played at LSU together. So maybe, Justin Jefferson, maybe they do a Justin Jefferson T. Higgins swap. No, they're not going to do that. Well, I mean, that actually would be pretty crazy, but it's not going to happen. I don't think so. But, yeah, I mean, just imagine if Justin Jefferson went to Cincinnati but again, if you're not going to pay T. Higgins, I mean, Justin Jefferson's going to be worth more money. So that just wouldn't work. But again, if they all teamed up together in the NFL, that'd be wild. But yeah, that's not happening right now. Justin Jefferson, he's with Sam Darnold, so that's his quarterback at the moment, and we'll see what the Vikings do with the draft, who they end up getting, but yeah, we're kind of getting off topic now. But yeah, with the Bengals here, they're healthy, one of the top teams in the AFC, definitely. And like I said, them bringing in Zach Moss after trading Mixon. Zach Moss had a productive season with the Colts. Now he's really going to be the lead back there. And again, the Bengals, you look at them, they're a pass first team. But I think Zach Moss, he could be all right there. That's a good spot for him. So we'll see what happens. But again, really this whole season is going to be revolving around the health of Joe Burrow. Because if he's not healthy, then the Bengals, they're not going to be able to. I mean, could they make the playoffs? I mean, Jake Browning didn't play that bad for him. They still finished with a winning record, even with Burrow getting hurt. But again, you're in a loaded conference. You're in a loaded division on top of that. So it would be tough, but you're hoping for a fully healthy Joe Burrow because, again, you had the calf injury before the season, and he was playing through it, wasn't playing that good. Then, the calf injury became a thing of the past, and then all of a sudden you had the wrist injury now, and that just led to the end of his season. And yeah, it just that really derailed everything. Because again, I mean, if Burrow's healthy and the Bengals make the playoffs, I mean, they were like the hottest team one of the hottest teams in the NFL at the time of his injury. So he doesn't get hurt, who knows what happens? But now we got 2024 and Burrow's healthy. I expect the Bengals to be one of the top teams in the AFC. I fully expect that. But yeah, I mean, they got to deal with now Derrick Henry in Baltimore. The Browns, if they're healthy, Bengals have a problem with them. At least in Cleveland, for some reason, they just can't beat them. I don't know what the problem is. But I mean, I know Burrow was injured week 1. He was playing hurt, but still, like in previous seasons, they just can't win in Cleveland. We'll see if that changes in 2024. But I know at least like with my spread pool, I'd probably take the Browns in Cleveland. But you know what's going to happen? Then the Bengals are going to end up winning. Yeah, you got a healthy Browns squad with Chubb and Watson coming back. And then, the Steelers, I mean, the Bengals kind of, they split with the Steelers. But again, they lost. Actually, no, they didn't split with the Steelers. The Steelers swept them. What am I saying? Because Kenny Pickett, with Matt Canada gone, they had 400 yards of offense. They won like 16-10, but that was with Brown. Well, both games were with Browning. And then both games with Burrow in 2022. Well, actually, the Steelers did win week 1 in 2022 with Trubisky as a starter, but then they lost later in the season with Pickett as a starter. But last year, yeah, the Steelers swept the Bengals, but that's because Burrow was hurt. Yeah, and then Mason Rudolph came in the second game, and the Steelers dominated. George Pickens had a huge game. Yeah, that was a rough game because, well, first of all, I picked the Bengals in my spread pool. Also, sat George Pickens in a league and then started the Bengals defense in another, and that's why I lost by 1 point in the semifinals of my playoffs. Lost to the same friend in 2 leagues. So yeah, didn't win any money from football fantasy wise, but recently did win my fantasy basketball championship, as well as won some money from the ESPN bracket challenge group that we do every year. So we still won something, just not with football. So, but yeah, that's again, went off on a tangent there, but yeah, that's so yeah. Mike Gesicki, back to the original point. Mike Gesicki looks like he likes being a Bengal, being with Joe Burrow, and let's see what they do together. Like I said, for fantasy, maybe Mike Gesicki's that tight end that, you go with that no tight end strat, and towards the end of the draft, you're like, all right, he's still available. Let me take him. Let me take a chance. Again, because if they trade T. Higgins, you got Jamar Chase, who's going to get a ton of targets, but then somebody else has to step up. So, but yeah, so that's pretty much it regarding this topic. Let me know what you guys think about the Bengals, Mike Gesicki. How do you see Mike Gesicki performing with the Bengals and Joe Burrow? Again, I expect him to be decent, but we'll see. So when we come back from our final break of the show, speaking of the Steelers, because we did talk about them a little bit, and the Bengals, we'll talk about them and their search for another veteran wide receiver. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about the Steelers, them still searching for a veteran wide receiver. So they're still actively searching for another receiver to replace Deontay Johnson, who was recently traded to the Carolina Panthers. They did make a couple of moves. They signed Van Jefferson. They signed Quez Watkins. But I don't really look at those moves as being that impactful, and no offense to those two guys, but those are for depth. That's what they were brought in for. So according to Sportsline's Jason La Canforna, I hope that's how you pronounce it, mentioned on the In the Huddle podcast that the Steelers are actively pursuing this move, and it wouldn't be surprising if they made the acquisition before or during the NFL draft. Well, yeah, I think I've been saying that if they don't go after another receiver that's still available, that's what they're going to end up doing, is drafting one. These are some of the receivers that are still out there: Tyler Boyd, who I continue to mention, Michael Thomas, Russell Gage, Hunter Renfrow, DJ Chark, McCole Hardman, and Michael Gallup are still available. Additionally, there are trade possibilities. I don't see them getting T. Higgins, and I don't see them getting Justin Jefferson. So that's not happening. But those are the other receivers that you got out there on the free agent market. Again, I think Tyler Boyd, among the group that I just mentioned, he's probably the best one. So we'll see if he ends up getting signed. Talks did halt between the Steelers and Tyler Boyd due to financial reasons, but circumstances could lead to a reopening of communication. You still got George Pickens, but you kind of need something else there. You got Pat Freiermuth, who's a good tight end. You got the duo of Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, but you need something else, and they don't have that at the moment. So that's and I know Calvin Austin, a receiver they drafted. I know he had made a couple of plays, but you need something else there. But at this point, I mean, we'll see. But I feel like the best thing is they're going to look to draft a receiver. And that's what the Steelers like to do. You know, they drafted George Pickens, and, I mean, well, I know his first season he looked good, but then after that, not so much. And that was Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, you know, you go back even further, Antonio Brown, and, you know, before everything kind of fell apart with him. The Steelers have had a lot of good receivers over the course of their history. I'm just naming ones off the top of my head that since I started watching. But you know, we'll just have to see. I mean, again, I think, you know, Tyler Boyd would be a nice move, but again, like I said, communications kind of halted, so we'll see if they re-engage. But I feel like a team will pick them up at some point. You know, I mean, with the Chiefs and everything going on, you know, just horrible news with the Rashee Rice situation. And it's the way things are right now with that, well, with what came out yesterday. Yeah, don't know if he's going to be playing football anytime soon. So maybe the Chiefs could be in the market for another receiver after they sign Marquise Brown. But again, this draft, plenty of wide receivers in this draft as well. I mean, you're not going to get the top guys, but there's other guys that, you know, the Steelers could target as well. But yeah, I mean, that's something that they're definitely going to have to address. You know, because especially, you know, with the quarterbacks that you got now, you know, you want to surround them with, you know, more talent. And right now, you only got George Pickens, and then it's question marks after that. Like in terms of like the wide receivers. So you want to bring somebody else in. So we'll see what the Steelers do. We'll see what they end up doing. But I think the draft at this point is probably the best way to go. And maybe you get one of the guys that's available for cheap. But yeah, because Van Jefferson and Quez Watkins, yeah, that's not really going to do it. Sorry, that's not really good. But again, that was just for depth. But you know, I like for the Steelers, I like what they did, bringing in Patrick Queen. And I mean, they didn't really give up that much to get Justin Fields, and they didn't sign Russell Wilson to a lucrative contract. He's not making that much money. Denver's paying most of his salary. So if the quarterback situation, if, you know, Russ doesn't play well, if Justin Fields, if he gets some playing time and he ends up not playing well, I mean, they just move off of them. But you're hoping that that's not the case. Because for the Steelers, you know, this is a team that, you know, I think fans are just dying for, you know, them to get past the first round of the playoffs, get to the playoffs and actually win a playoff game and not just get there and be like, hey, you know, at least we made it. Because that's really what it's been recently. Now, I don't think a lot of fans are like that, but there are some that probably have that mindset. But yeah, it's frustrating because, again, they haven't won a playoff game since 2016. You know, they've made the playoffs, but they haven't won anything. They lost to the Jaguars and Blake Bortles and Jacksonville, that team. You know, 2018 they missed it. 2019 they missed it. 2020 the Browns were up 28-0 after the first quarter. 2021 you made it, but now you did have the lead against the Chiefs. You did, because the Chiefs tried to do a trick play, and, you know, TJ Watt picked up the football and ran it in for a touchdown, and you were like, wow, the Steelers are winning. But ended up losing that. Didn't make it in 2022. And you made it with Mason Rudolph last year, but yeah, you didn't really go that far. So now you got Russell Wilson, you got Justin Fields. Russell Wilson right now is going to be the starter. And whether you like Russell Wilson and Justin Fields or whether you don't like them and don't think that they're going to be good, the Steelers somehow always find a way to finish with a decent record. and come close or squeak into the playoffs. So, we'll see. I mean, I've said that with Russell Wilson, I think you're going to get what you got in Denver. I don't think he's turning back the clock. Justin Fields, yeah, the jury's still out on him. Again, makes a lot of great plays with his legs, and you did see, that connection with DJ Moore was working last year, but now he's with the Steelers. So if he gets a chance to start, he's going to have to form that connection with George Pickens and Freiermuth and those guys. But we'll see. I mean, change of scenery for these guys might be the best thing. And again, they're playing in a tough division. And talking about with the Bengals in the last segment, I mean, the AFC North is a gauntlet in itself, and a gauntlet of a conference. Now, again, you could say, well, the Ravens are better. Yeah, well, the Steelers, again, the Ravens rested their starters in Week 18, but the Steelers swept them. It's not like the Ravens lately the Ravens just beat the Steelers. No, that's not the case. The Steelers still beat the Ravens. Despite, the lack of good quarterback play. Because what was the score of the first game? It was like 17-10 against the Ravens. Kenny Pickett threw that the go-ahead touchdown to George Pickens, and then I think T.J. Watt ended the game with like a sack. But that's why T.J. Watt's the quarterback of the defense. I mean, the Steelers are a different team when he's healthy. So, yeah, I mean, the Steelers, for me, I think they're just going to be like a middle-of-the-pack team. They're going to be fighting for a wild card spot. And again, injuries happen, so that kind of helps them out. I mean, you had Joe Burrow getting hurt, and, Trevor Lawrence got hurt and was playing hurt. The Browns, the Browns still made it with Joe Flacco. It's the Steelers things went the Steelers' way where they won out, and then everything around them went the way they wanted it to, and they made it. I mean, they still lost to the Bills. I mean, they didn't really have a chance in that game. Although it was a one-score game at one point. It was 24-17, but still, I mean, they really didn't have a chance. But now, they made changes at quarterback, so let's see, how that goes. But again, I'm not expecting, Seattle Russ. We're going to see more of Denver Russ. And again, we'll see what Fields, if Fields gets a shot and plays. Because if Russell Wilson doesn't play well, I mean, that they're going to be calling for Justin Fields. I mean, when you had Trubisky out there, I mean, there were fans that were chanting for Mason Rudolph, and then they did get Mason Rudolph. And you know what? Mason Rudolph, to his credit, he got the Steelers in the playoffs, which I didn't think was going to happen. So I was wrong about that. But yeah, we'll see what happens in 2024. Is this the year the Steelers get to the playoffs and actually win a playoff game finally after a long time? Or do they miss the playoffs? Do they make it and lose in the first round? We'll see. I mean, I think they're going to be in the mix, but I don't know what that's going to lead to. They're going to make it, or are they going to just miss out? Because in Kenny Pickett's first season, I mean, they finished the season strong. They finished 9-8, but they just missed the playoffs. So I could definitely see them winning 9 games and just missing it. That's kind of where I'm leaning right now. Is they win, they have a decent record, or a winning record, but I think they just miss out. But we'll see. We'll see. Again, it's only April. We got a long way to go. So, but yeah, I mean, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are with the Steelers. What do you guys think that they could potentially do at wide receiver, whether it's through free agency, whether it's through the draft? I think they're probably going to lean more towards the draft. But who knows? I mean, they sign a guy like Tyler Boyd. That's a good signing for them. Again, I don't think that's like a game changer, but I think that would be a good move. But again, we shall see. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. again, thank you guys for tuning in. Again, we'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Again, tomorrow's already Friday. The weeks just fly by. And also make sure to tune in to the other shows as well. And we had Nelson in the comments. Make sure to tune in for the GSMC Basketball Podcast because, again, NBA playoffs are right around the corner, so make sure to tune in for that. Again, NHL playoffs coming up soon as well. Baseball in full swing. So, yeah, lots going on with the other sports. Football's, well, I mean, listen, we still got the UFL. Don't forget. But, yeah, I mean, I did talk about it the other day, so it might pop up again at some point. So, but yeah, make sure to do that. Give the other show some love, like I've been saying. And, yeah, so with that, that is all the time that we have for today. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. And until then, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that